All right, so Module 9, Homework 1 is talking about the slope of a line. So in this section, we're going to find the slope, use the slope to determine how the line slants. We're going to write the equation in slope-intercept form, point slope form, standard form. We're going to use the slope-intercept form to find the slope and the intercept. We are going to write the equation of a horizontal vertical line. We're going to graph equations. We're going to write the equation of the line. How long is that? Okay, thank you. Write the equation in function notation, and we are going to determine if they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Last but not least, we're going to write the equation of a parallel, perpendicular line. So that's all we have to do for this section. So it's quite a bit to cover for this section, but a lot of it is talking about slopes, talking about lines, stuff that we did on test 1. So it should just be a refresher from test 1. So starting off, how could we describe a line? So when you think of a line, what comes to mind? Infinite, goes on forever in both directions. Great. What else?
A line.
A line. How can you describe a line?
Isn't it like undefined if it's up and down?
Okay, so they could be up and down. So we talk about the slope. Straight. Perfect. What do you mean by straight?
Like, it's not curved in any way.
Perfect. So it's not curved, it's straight. So meaning if it's straight, it has the same exact steepness along the line. Whether you look at the beginning of the line, the end of the line, it goes on forever, and for forever, it's going to have the same steepness. So it is straight. Meaning the steepness. What's another word for steepness? Yeah? Slope. Perfect. So the steepness or the slope is constant. The steepness or the slope is constant. If it's not constant, that means it's curving. So it could be steeper at one point, steeper at another point, whatever, but it's straight, meaning the steepness, the slope is constant. So working backwards, the slope is the steepness of the line. The steepness of the line. So we talked about this before, but we have some equations for slope that you do need to know for the test. So mathematicians are efficient. So instead of writing the word slope out every time, we use the letter M to abbreviate it. So M means slope, which means our average rate is change, which we know is rise over run. Rising means going up and down, so that's our y values. Running is going left and right, so that's our x values. So we can also say y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1, which should be change over time. So depending on the context of the problem determines what equation we need to use to solve for the slope. So slope is just a number. So for that number, we have different options. I could have a positive slope, a positive number. That means if I read my graph from left to right, because we read in English from left to right, that the graph is going to go upward. If it's a negative slope, looking at it from left to right means it's going to be going downward. We talked about the word vertical and undefined and horizontal, all that good stuff. So if we have a horizontal line going from left to right, our slope is 0. If we have a vertical line going up and down, our slope is undefined. A lot of people get confused, or especially on the test, you know, when you like second guess yourself a lot. So if that happens, we have a way to derive to figure out what is the answer. So looking at our horizontal line first, we know our slope is rise over run. Looking at that horizontal line, how much is it rising? How much is it going up and down? What? 0. Yeah, it's not going up and down at all. Thank you. And then running from left to right. It's going left and right forever, right? So infinity. What is 0 divided by infinity, or 0 divided by any number?
0.
0. Boom. So that tells us our slope is 0 for horizontal lines. Looking at a vertical line, any vertical line, same thing. Rise over run. Rising is going up and down. This graph is going up and down forever. So that'll be to infinity. Running is from left to right. This line is not going left to right at all, so 0. So what is infinity or any number divided by 0?
Undefined.
Undefined. If you put that in your calculator, some number divided by 0, it'll give you an error. So we know we cannot divide by 0. We talked about that with the domain. We cannot divide by 0. So that tells us it's undefined. So I don't memorize those. I go ahead and work it out so that way I know I don't have to memorize anything. I don't have to worry about forgetting anything or messing anything up. We can just derive it. So another little hint that kind of helps me is horizontal has some O's in it, and O's are the same as zeros, where vertical does not. So that kind of helps me see that, okay, when there's horizontal has the letter O in it, and O looks like 0. So that's what helps me remember personally. So maybe if that will help you, whatever will help you. Questions before we find the slope? All right, so let's actually go through and let's actually find the slope of the line that goes through the two given points. Our two given points are -2, 8, and 4, 4. I'm going to label this first set of point x1, y1. I'm going to label the second set of points x2, y2. So because I have 2 points, I have an x1 and a y1, I have an x2 and a y2. To find the slope, we can plug into the formula m equals y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. If you notice, I write the equation out, the formula out for slope every single time. The more I write it, the more I say it, the more I remember it, for one. And for two, the less I'll get it wrong, because I have the equation right there. I'm literally just plugging into the equation, so I can't mess anything up, or it's less likely for me to mess anything up. So plugging in our values, what's y2? 4 minus y1, 8, thank you, all over x2. 4 minus x1, -2. Perfect, thank you. So we're subtracting -2. Those two negatives become positive. 4 minus 8, all over 4 plus 2. 4 minus 8 will give me -4. All over 4 plus 2 will give me 6. So -4 over 6. Going back to simplifying rational expressions, simplifying fractions, what factor does -4 and 6 have in common?
So you're saying if we don't put the y squared, the y to the second first, then we're going to get this answer wrong?
So you're saying put this one as x2, y2, and this one as x1, y1?
Yeah, that's basically how I did mine.
Yeah, that's okay. You'll get the same answer. As long as you keep the two ones together, and as long as you keep the two twos together, you'll get the same answer. You can't just swap it around, though. You see what I'm saying? So this point has to stay either x1, y1 or x2, y2. If you swap it around and just pick any random point, then you'll get a messed up sign.
I already got it.
You already saw, yeah. So you see it?
I got -3 on the bottom.
Okay, so it's okay. That's what this is for. You're learning. So now you can see it. Now you'll remember that mistake. So good question. Thank you for asking me a question. Look at you, just trying to get some brownie points by asking a question. All right, so what does that answer your question, by the way? Yeah, okay. So -4 and +6, GCF. We'll factor out 2, thank you. Let's factor divide out of 2 from the top and the bottom. And we are left with a final answer of -2/3. Remember that negative could go out front, on the top or on the bottom. Our answer is -2/3. So go ahead and try the next one by yourself. Same exact problem, just different numbers, so try it by yourself. Find the slope of the line that goes through the given points, -1, -9, and 7, -5. Alrighty, looking to see what you did, looking to see what we did together. I labeled my first point as x1, y1, so -1, -9 is x1, y1. The second point, 7, -5, I labeled as x2, y2. So plugging into my slope formula, we know m equals y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. So plugging in our values, we have -5 minus -9 all over 7 minus -1. The two negatives become a positive, so it really becomes -5 plus 9 all over 7 plus 1, which will give us 4 over 8. They both have a 4 in common, so if I factor divide that out, we are left over with 1/2. So looking to see at what you did, looking to see what we did together, what questions, comments, or concerns do you have for me, please? Yes, sir.
So every time it has a negative, it turns into addition?
Whenever we're subtracting a negative, then yes, it turns into addition.
Alright.
Does that answer your question?
Mhm.
Thank you for asking a question. More brownie points. There you go. Good job, Jason. Other questions?
We're getting brownie points today.
Other questions? So just remember, relating this back to Module 7, which is rational functions, crazy fractions, we still have the same concept. So we're still dealing with fractions. We're still dealing out with factoring. We're factoring out the GCF. So do you see how it's kind of like now that we know those things all coming into play with one problem? That was back just as easy as slope. All right, so if no questions, let's go on to the next page. So we're dealing with slope. Now we're dealing with the y-intercept. It asks us, what is the y-intercept of a line? What is the y-intercept?
When the line crosses the y-axis.
Perfect, thank you. It's the point that crosses the y-axis. So if it crosses the y-axis, that point, what is our x value going to be? 0. Good, every time. So it's going to be 0 and b, just like we call the slope m to abbreviate it to make it more efficient. We call the y-intercept b, so it's always going to be 0, b. So putting the slope and the y-intercept together, we have what's called the slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, another formula you will need to know for the test, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So let's do an example. It asks us to find the slope and the y-intercept of the following line. 3x minus 10y equals -19. Is this in slope-intercept form? No, bonus question. What form is this in? Yeah, standard. Good. Standard form. So this is in standard form. Nice. Yes, and we want it slope-intercept. So standard form, by the way, is ax plus by equals c. So yeah, standard form doesn't tell us about m, it doesn't tell us about b, it doesn't tell us about our slope or our y-intercept. So we need to put this equation into slope-intercept form. I need to solve for y. I need to get y by itself. How could I do that? Subtract 3x. Perfect, thank you. Subtracting 3x from both sides, that'll cancel that out. We're left with -10y equals -3x minus 19. Remember, I want it to be mx plus b. That's why I put my x term first. That's why I put -3x first. Last but not least, getting y by itself. Divide by -10. Thank you. Notice we're dividing the left whole side by -10. That means the right whole side needs to be divided by -10. That means both terms are being divided by -10. By the way, we are going to solve for y to put into slope-intercept form. Which is y equals mx plus b. So that'll leave us with y equals, we have negative 3x divided by negative 10, and we have negative 19 divided by negative 10. Looking at negative 3x over negative 10, GCF that we can factor or divide out. That negative 1. So the two negatives become a positive. So we really have positive 3 over 10, x. Same thing, negative 19 and negative 10. GCF. Negative. So that those two negatives again become positive. 19 over 10. So it is now in slope-intercept form of y equals mx plus b. So now we could easily identify our m value, which is our slope, and our b value, which is our y-intercept. So our slope, which is m, is 3 over 10. Notice it's just our m value, so it's just 3 over 10. A lot of people get confused and they put x in there. X is not part of our slope. It's just the number 3 over 10. Our y-intercept, we said, is the point 0, comma b, which in this case will be 0, comma 19 over 10. So notice my y-intercept is the point that crosses the y-axis, so I need to label it as a point, as an ordered pair, 0, comma 19 over 10. What questions, comments, or concerns do you have for me about this one? If not, looking at the next one, y equals negative 11. So we already have y equals, and it's in slope-intercept form. It's in slope-intercept form.
Yes.
Yeah, kind of, right? It's in y equals. So it's in y, when it's y equals negative 11. This is slope-intercept form. This is also standard form. So it's kind of like the only way we can write this equation. So, but I don't have an m value. So how can I write this with an m value?
If there isn't an m value, it automatically equals 0.
Perfect. We can write it in as 0. Exactly. Good job. Thank you. So we can write it as y equals 0x minus 11. So whether you need to write it like this or you can automatically just see it, totally up to you, whatever helps you get the right answer. But now we can easily see that it's y equals mx plus b. So there was not an m value, so we can put it as 0, because 0 times x is just 0. 0 minus 11 is negative 11. But now I could easily see and identify our m value and our b value. So if we have y equals 0x minus 11, our slope, which is m, is going to be 0. And our y-intercept, which is the point 0, comma b, will be 0, comma negative 11. So notice the equation is plus b. So we're going to be adding a negative 11. So make sure you put that negative in there. So let me write another little note. This is in slope-intercept and standard form, because we're going to come back to that in a second. The slope-intercept form is y equals. Standard form has your variables on one side and your numbers on the other side, which we have that. We have our variables on one side and our numbers on the other. So it is in both slope-intercept and standard form. The next one's going to be similar. Before we go there, what questions do you have for me? By the way, looking at y equals negative 11, what does this line look like? What does this line look like?
Horizontal.
It's horizontal. Yeah, it's horizontal. Good. Thank you. Sorry. So note, this is going to be a horizontal line. So the way that I think about it is we have our x and our y axis. Our our y axis is vertical, so y equals is the opposite. So y equals negative 11 will be somewhere down here. Keep that in mind too. So for the next one, we have to find the slope of the line. Oh, this one didn't even ask for the y-intercept, but it's okay, we did it anyways. Find the slope of the line. X plus 3 equals 0. So we can't put this in slope-intercept form because there's no y. I can't solve for y. So if I solve for x, if I subtract 3 from both sides, we get x equals negative 3. What does this graph look like?
Going down.
Yeah, so it's going up and down. So it's vertical. I knew what you meant. So it's vertical at x equals negative 3. So looking at a vertical line, what's our slope? Undefined. Good. If you need to look at rise over run, this graph is rising up and down forever, so infinity. All over our run is going left and right, which is 0. Infinity divided by 0 is undefined. So our slope is undefined. So those are some tricky ones that always get us. So I wanted to make sure that we went over those. So before we go on to the next page, how could I help you understand this better? What questions do you have for me?
I know you're only supposed to find like comments when it's asked to the slope line. So like if you were given y-intercept, it would just be negative 3.
So it goes up and down forever, so it's never touching the y-axis. Yeah, so there'd be no y-intercept. So no y-intercept. Thank you, great question. There's no y-intercept. It never crosses that y-axis. Great question, thank you. What else?
What is the infinity for?
Okay, so infinity is our rise, so this means it's going up and down. It's going up and down forever. So that's what infinity means, forever. Our run is going from left to right. It's not going left and right at all, so 0. So infinity divided by 0 is undefined. Any number divided by 0 is undefined. And if that messes you up, if you put any number, let's just say 10 divided by 0 in our calculator, it'll give us an error. We cannot divide by 0, so error means undefined. So if that confuses you, just put it into your calculator. Thank you again for a question. Last call before we go on to the next page. All right, let's go on. So we talked about and we identified the slope and the y-intercept. So now we're going to use the slope and y-intercept to graph the line. It asks us to graph the line y equals 3x minus 2. Y equals 3x minus 2. So by finding the slope and the y-intercept, we can graph this line. So is this in slope-intercept form already? Yeah, so that kind of helps us. This is in slope-intercept form. It asks us to graph the line y equals negative 3x minus 2, which is already in slope-intercept form. So we can easily identify our m value and our b value. So it's already in y equals mx plus b. So looking at this, what is our slope? Negative 3. We know it's going to be rise over run. So we know negative 3 is just negative 3 over 1. So we know we are going to rise negative 3. If we're rising negative, that means rise is going up and down. So if it's negative, we're going to go down 3. Our run is positive 1. Right is the positive direction. Running is from left to right. So that means we're going to go right 1. So down 3 and right 1. But before we go down 3 and right 1, I have to start somewhere. So we need a starting point. So what's our y-intercept? Good. Our y-intercept is the point 0, comma b. So it's the point 0, negative 2. And yes, good, this is our starting point. So starting at over 0, down negative 2. We are going to go down negative 3. So from that starting point, I'm going to go down 3 and right 1. Boom, I have 2 points. I can connect the dots. And that's it. So we started at our y-intercept, which was at 0, negative 2. From there, I found another point based off of my slope. So we went down 3 and right 1 to find our next point. So a lot of you are very vocal and told me that you did not like this section. So I think the reason why you don't like a section, I think that you would agree, is because you don't understand it. So this is back from test 1. So I really want to make sure that if you didn't get it on test 1, it's coming back around so you get it this time. So please, what questions, comments, or concerns do you have for me? What questions, comments, or concerns do you have for me? If not, try the next one by yourself. It asks us to graph the line 4x plus 2y equals 8. If you notice, this is not in slope-intercept form, so you have to put it in y equals first. Once it's in y equals, you can find the slope in the y-intercept, and you can graph it like we just did. So go ahead and try this example. So our first step is getting y equals, put it in slope-intercept form.
You know how that you subtract the position, and you do the opposite.
Yeah, so you're trying to move this 4x over. 4x is positive, so you do the opposite. So you use that subtract one. Good. So you're moving this over here, which is perfect. So that would just answer it. So on this side, you're just left with 2y equals negative 4. Don't forget the next. Okay, perfect. That's your previous one. Are you doing this one?
Yeah,
Okay.
just looking at this review.
Okay, but you haven't done this one yet?
And
Okay.
I'm still working on it.
Nice. All right, so let's go over this next one. Looking to see what you did, looking to see what we're going to do together. It asks us to graph the line 4x plus 2y equals 8. Looking at this is in standard form, so meaning it's not in slope-intercept form, it's not y equals mx plus b. So just by looking at it, I do not know the slope, I do not know the y-intercept. So I can solve this for y to put it into slope-intercept form. So I started off by it was positive 4x. So we subtracted 4x to both sides, smooth that 4x over. That'll leave us with 2y equals negative 4x plus 8, because I want that x term first to get it into mx plus b. Lastly, getting y by itself, I can divide by 2. We divided the left whole side by 2, so we're going to divide the right whole side by 2. So meaning both terms get divided by 2. So we're left with y equals negative 4x divided by 2 plus 8 divided by 2, which simplifies down to y equals negative 2x plus 4. This is now in y equals mx plus b form, so we can easily see that m is negative 2 and b is positive 4, meaning our slope, which is our m value, is negative 2, which is negative 2 over 1. So we're rising negative 2, which means we're going to go down 2. We're running positive 1, which means we're going to go right 1. We need to start somewhere. So our starting point is our y-intercept, which is 0b, meaning it's 0, 4. So I started off by graphing 0, 4, and then I found the next point based off of my slope. So my slope said go down 2, right 1. Boom, there's my next point. Connect the dots, you are good to go. So looking to see what you did, looking to see what we did together. What questions, comments, or concerns do you have for me, please? What questions, comments, concerns do you have for me, please? If not, let's go to the next page. So last page for this section is talking about parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So two lines that are parallel, what does that mean? What is the word parallel?
They never cross.
They never cross.
They have the exact same slope.
They have the exact same slope. Exactly. Perfect. So parallel lines. So for example, parallel lines, railroad tracks. Railroad tracks have the same slope. They never cross. They have the same tilt. What about perpendicular? What does that word mean?
Oh, they cross exactly one time.
They cross exactly one time. So they cross at a 90-degree angle. So they are just like at an intersection. They cross at a 90-degree angle. So with that being said, we know the slopes are opposite, meaning opposite signs. So one's positive, one's negative. Reciprocals. So the slopes are opposite reciprocal. Reciprocal means we're going to flip our fraction. And then if they're not the same, or if they're not opposite reciprocals, that means they're neither. So let's do a couple examples. We're just going to identify if they are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So looking at y equals 5x plus 2. Thankfully, this is already in slope-intercept form for us. So y equals mx plus b. So what's our slope?
5 over 1.
5, which is 5 over 1. For the next line, y equals 5x minus 3. What's our slope? What's our m value? 5. So if they have the same slope, what does that mean? They're parallel, thank you. They have the same slope, so we know they are parallel. They are parallel. So what does it mean for two lines to be parallel? We said something like this. They have the same slope. What does it mean for two lines to be perpendicular? We already talked about it. They cross at a 90-degree angle. So we know they're going to have opposite, meaning opposite signs. One's positive, one's negative. Reciprocal means we're going to flip the fraction. Slopes. Opposite reciprocal slopes. So we talked about parallel. We talked about parallel. Our next example, decide whether they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither. We have f of x. F of x is the same thing as y. So we have y equals negative 9x plus 9. Thankfully, this is already in slope-intercept form for us of y equals mx plus b. So looking at f of x equals negative 9x plus 9, what is our slope? What is our m value? Negative 9. Looking at our next one, g of x equals 1/9 x plus 3. Thankfully, this is already in slope-intercept form for us. So what is our slope? 1 over 9. So I have negative 9 and I have positive 1 over 9. So meaning, are these parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Perpendicular, good. One's positive, one's negative. One's 9 over 1. One is flipped as 1 over 9. So they have to be both opposite and reciprocals to be perpendicular. One has to be positive, one's negative, and one's 1 over 9, and the other one's flipped, which is 9 over 1, which is just 9. Last two for this section. Before we go there, what questions, comments, or concerns do you have for me? If not, last one like this. So it says So it says decide whether they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither. We have negative 10x plus 2y equals 5. Is this in slope-intercept form for us?
No.
No, so we have to put it in slope-intercept form. So looking at negative 10x plus 2y equals 5. I want to try to get y by itself, meaning I want to move this negative 10x term to the other side. How do I do that? Add 10x. Thank you, to both sides. So that'll leave us with 2y equals positive 10x plus 5. Last but not least, getting y by itself. Help me out. What should we do?
Divide by 2.
Divide by 2. Thank you. We're dividing the left whole side by 2. That means the right, both terms are getting divided by 2. So that'll leave us left over with y equals 10x divided by 2 plus 5 divided by 2, which can be simplified down to y equals 10 divided by 2 is 5x plus 5 over 2, which cannot be simplified. So this is now in slope-intercept form of y equals mx plus b. So therefore, what is my m value? What's my slope? 5. So for the first one, our slope is 5. For the second one, 5x minus y equals 3. Again, getting y by itself, I want to move this positive 5x to the other side. So how do I do that? Subtract it. So we're going to subtract 5x from both sides. We are left with negative y equals negative 5x plus 3. Last but not least, to get y by itself, divide by -1. Thank you. We're dividing the left whole side by -1, so we're going to divide the right whole side by -1. So both terms get divided by -1. That'll leave us with y equals -5x divided by -1 plus 3 divided by -1, which can be simplified down to y equals -5 divided by -1 is +5. X positive 3 divided by -1 is -3. So we have y equals 5x minus 3. So it is now in slope-intercept form of y equals mx plus b. So now looking at this, what is our m value? What is our slope? 5. Both slopes are 5. What does that tell us? Parallel. Perfect. They have the same slope. So we know they are parallel. Last example for this homework. Before we go there, questions, comments, concerns for me, please. So it asks us to find the slope of the line that's parallel and perpendicular to the following line. 3x minus 2y equals 2. Just by looking at this equation, can we see the slope?
No.
No, we can't see what m is. We cannot see the slope. This is in standard form. So we have to put it in slope-intercept form first. So I want to get y by itself. So what should I do?
Subtract the 3x.
Subtract the 3x. Good, thank you. Subtract 3x from both sides. So we're left with -2y equals -3x plus 2. Last but not least, to get y by itself.
Divide -2.
Divide by -2. Awesome, thank you. We're dividing the left whole side by -2. That means the right whole side is being divided by -2. So both terms are being divided by -2. That'll leave us with y equals -3x divided by -2 plus 2 divided by -2, which can simplify down to y equals -3 divided by -2. The two negatives cancel each other out. So we're left with positive 3 over 2x. Positive 2 divided by -2 will leave us with -1. So this is now in slope-intercept form of y equals mx plus b. We had y equals 3 over 2x minus 1. So what is this slope? No.
3 over 2.
How is it slope-intercept form if it's -1 or not +1?
Because I could say plus -1 and it's still there.
Oh.
You're just checking to make sure I was paying attention. You're good. You're good.
No, I missed that.
What, a brain fart?
I don't know. I don't know, math's weird. Half the time they say like you can't add stuff, and then sometimes they're like, well, you just throw a plus and there's plus negative.
Okay, so good point. So adding and subtracting, they've always made it look like two separate things, right? And like multiplying and dividing are two separate things. They're really the same exact thing, so why do they make it look different? So in this case, our y-intercept will be 0, -1. So I need to label it as -1. So if it helps you to write y equals 3 over 2x plus -1, I have to make it -1. Then I don't need two signs, so positive and negative can just become negative. So you're the second person that said that to me this week. That's why I made a big deal about it. So does that make sense now?
Yeah, it's just odd.
Yeah, it is odd. I agree. Because the formula is positive, but we have to put that negative in there somewhere. So that's why. Good point, though. Anyways, our slope, yeah. What is our slope?
Are you supposed to figure out if it's perpendicular or parallel?
Yeah, so this slope is 3 over 2. So the parallel slope
Would be the same.
would be exactly the same, exactly, for the third time. So m equals 3 over 2 still. Our perpendicular slope is going to be the opposite reciprocal. This one's positive, so our perpendicular one is going to be negative. This one's 3 over 2, so we need to flip it. 2 over 3. So a parallel slope is 3 over 2. Perpendicular slope is negative 2 over 3. So this is all of Module 9, Homework 1 notes.